Hello and welcome to the special holiday edition of the Online Warriors podcast.
Happy holidays.
This is coming out on Christmas. So, some people are going to be coming back like from years forward in time and being like, I'm going to listen to what episode is this? Like episode 36.2 or something. And they're just going to be assaulted with the fact that it's Christmas morning when this episode comes out, and we're just going to be talking about it for the next 2 minutes. And I'm sorry about that, but this is a morning record, not on Christmas morning. This is a few days before. We're doing a rare morning record.
If we were so committed that we did a Christmas morning record.
Hang on, family. We got to wait on presents. The Online Warriors needs us.
Let me be the first to say we're not that committed. And if you want a podcast that's that committed, you should look somewhere else, because that's Christmas morning. I got things I got to take care of.
Like slamming open some chocolate oranges.
Slamming open some chocolate oranges. Yeah, no, it's a few days before. I do though. I tell you what, and I've said this before. We most of our records are in the evenings. This is a rare morning record. I love the morning records. I feel like my energy is just really topped off. I got coffee here.
So what do you guys think about quitting our day jobs and just doing this full time?
If only we could. That's my view of that. So Merry Christmas, Happy Honda Days, Happy Toyota-thon, if that's your inclination. I'm not going to say Happy Truck Month because we don't believe in that here. I actually don't even know when is Truck Month.
I thought it was December, wasn't it? Or no? I don't know.
You're thinking of a December to remember. It's
got to be Trucktober, and if it's not Trucktober, there's a missed opportunity marketing-wise, because that just sounds right. Like, would you rather have Trucktober or Truckuary? I don't know, actually Truckuary is pretty good too.
That slaps.
We're not talking about cars today, but Happy Honda Days if you're a Honda driver, or even if you're not. We got to talk about the Superman trailer. That came out last week. The first footage we've seen of the new James Gunn Superman being released next summer. There's a lot to dig into, so we're going to dig into that. We're going to talk about the Star Wars Holiday Special. And I'm going to be honest, that is very tangentially a news topic. It just happens to crop up in the new Star Wars show that came out, Star Wars Skeleton Crew. And I kind of want to wax poetic with my experience with it and just talk about how interesting that show's life cycle is. And then we're gonna get real. We're going to get real for Christmas. Merry Christmas. The gift we left under the tree for you is us digging into what I would consider to be a more serious topic for us. And I'm going to be honest, I'm excited to dig into that. We're going to talk about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and all of the news that's come out in the past week about, what happened surrounding the It Ends With Us press tour when that movie came out. Those of you who were alive over the summer probably remember what I'm talking about, because it was a whole thing then too, and now we're getting even more information about that. So we'll dig into that as well. As an initial foray into the podcast world, I also want to give a quick PSA. We're not going to be doing a quiz today. We've decided to lay down our arms, and I guess Techtic, there's no chance of him coming back from last place, so he is the official quiz loser of the year.
Yay.
But the caveat of that, and Techtic made me promise that I would on the air declare that before the end of this year, I'm going to officially start my punishment from last year, which is watching Hawkeye.
This is on the air declare.
Now, on the air declare, hold me to it next week. Ask me for an update on episode 1, and I'll be sure to provide my review, which I'm sure people have been waiting with bated breath for. There are people who probably haven't started watching the show yet because they want to hear what I think of it. I imagine there's millions upon millions of people out there who are in that situation, so you won't have to wait any longer. I'll be watching this show presently, and I'll be giving my thoughts on it in upcoming episodes. Techtic's punishment, I think, is TBD at this point. I don't think we've really decided firmly on anything. I think some stuff's been soft launched, but we'll get back to you on that.
We'll leave that to the Patreons to decide.
We'll leave it to the Patreons, but no quiz today. So, like I said, we're laying down our arms in the name of Christmas. So let's dig into Superman. So we got a trailer for Superman. This is, of course, the James Gunn helmed movie starring David Corenswet, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. We have Nathan Fillion in it. We have Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. We saw a bunch of interesting things in this trailer. Maybe most notably Crypto the Dog, which I have very limited exposure to. I'm going to turn it over to you two nerds, who I imagine have a number of things to say about this. I have very limited Superman exposure. I haven't watched a single Superman movie. I think Superman is a bad superhero, and I thought this trailer was mostly bad.
Really?
Let me I think there are elements of the cast that are going to be fabulous. I think that Rachel Brosnahan in particular is going to be a great Lois Lane.
Agreed.
I do not buy Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I think
to agree with that as well.
I think Corin Sweat is fine. Like, I think he'll be fine. I think he has probably one of the easiest jobs, ironically, of all the characters. I think in particular, he's going to be a very, very believable Clark Kent. I think he has that. I think Henry Cavill trying to be Clark Kent was very hard to believe because he just looks too
Superman.
I don't know. He looks too chiseled and too just perfect to be Clark Kent. Like, it was basically just and I know the whole mystique of it.
Here's
they
thing.
Put glasses on him and he totally changes.
I like
it's just
a leaner Superman. I really do, because at the end of the day, he's not super strong because he's ripped. He's super strong because he's an alien. I prefer this rendition.
I also think too, like, to your point, that I would probably be fooled by his alter ego. I don't think there's been a Superman in the past where I've been like, well, I can get behind the glasses thing, throwing people off. Like, I can actually, though, understand people not recognizing him as Superman. I feel like they differentiated Clark Kent from Superman enough in this trailer, at least, where that's actually a believable aspect of this movie.
Going back to Nicholas Hoult, who, like, by the way, I like Nicholas Hoult quite a bit. I think he's great in the X-Men movies. I really want to watch Juror Number 2, which I think just hit streaming. I think he's a fantastic actor. Again, having not really, I think I've seen bits and pieces of some of the more recent movies, but without watching any of them end to end, when I think of Lex Luthor, if I need to picture an actor, I actually picture Jesse Eisenberg, which I think is kind of surprising.
Didn't he already play Lex Luthor?
He did. And my point is, I think that just from a purely physical perspective, I feel like he was closer than, like, Nicholas Hoult just looks too, I don't know. Do soft. I want to say namby-pamby? Something like that. He has
a soft face.
So I don't know that I'm buying that.
You guys are gonna hate my answer. If I had to cast my own Lex Luthor, it would be a shaved head Tom Cruise. Honestly, he's got the eyebrows and jaw structure for it.
You know what though?
I get that.
And not to, I guess I'll beat around the bush a little bit, but, like, Lex Luthor, you kind of want him to look like Jeff Bezos, and I mean, that's not that far off, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, you shaving the head gets you most of the way there. I also think, and Nathan Fillion, he's in this movie as Guy Gardner, but, like, I think he would have been a good Lex Luthor. You shave his head, I think he's pretty close. Again, that's me not having a whole lot of comic knowledge, but, like, going back to kind of what the trailer gave us, it starts with Superman, like, kind of looking like he's dying. Which is an interesting, grabby thing to do. I think the suit is great. I do think the suit might be better than the last suit, especially from, like, I think traditionalists really like this suit a lot more, and I understand why that is. The trailer kind of starts getting into, I think, a lot of what some of the previous movies got into with Cavill, of, like, he's an alien and people just generally, mistrust him, even though he's trying to help us. That seems to be the continued runner through all of the recent Superman movies, and it's one that I totally understand, and that's not what I'm complaining about. I think most of the complaints I have are visual. I don't think it looks that. Maybe for me it's a Christopher Nolan thing where, like, I like the bit of a darker aesthetic. This is a lot more color saturated, which I think a lot of people are really going to like.
See, I think
for me it's a personal problem.
That's where I think the trailer actually did a really good job, and I think the movie direction is much improved. I think the DC movies have been mired in this darkness and this, I mean, both in aesthetic and in terms of tone for the story, this just darkness that I think we're living a lot of darkness every day in real life. And I know Marvel came in originally with this, not quite, they were a little more campy than what I think this movie is going to be, but this campy, colorful, fun take, a little bit more optimistic look at superheroes. And I think that came at a time when people really needed that. And now the MCU has devolved into this kind of, like, spaghetti mess of everything. But I think this movie has an opportunity to come in with a more positive, like, I got a very positive vibe from this trailer. Cool. And I think that's what we need now, and I think that's what can revive the DC universe right now, and I think that can revive Superman as a character and as a franchise right now, because I think that's where the DC cinematic universe has failed for the last decade plus. And additionally, I just liked the entire composition of this trailer. I think going back to the original score was an inspired move because there's something very nostalgic, and people, equate that score with the original Superman, that everybody had really good feelings and good vibes, and, drawing on that nostalgia kind of reflects that, oh, we can go back to a more positive time sort of feeling. And then I really like the fact that there was very little dialogue. I mean, this kind of goes hand in hand with the score, but it's very rare that you see a trailer that relies so heavily on the music and the visuals to carry the weight. And I think it worked really well here. I think the only 2 lines in this entire trailer that were spoken was the kid crying out Superman when he was about to get, pummeled and Superman saves him, and then Superman saying, "Crypto, take me home," or whatever he says. And I think that worked really well just from a, building of not quite tension, but just building this anticipation and this epicness of this movie. And I don't know, I thought that worked really well for trailers. I feel like we don't get that a lot anymore. You don't really get that sense of epicness. It's not as cohesive as what this trailer felt like. Plus Crypto.
I'm glad you guys picked up a lot on the more lightheartedness. The presence of Crypto is pointing to that they're going to be focused on the Silver Age of comics, which is the more lightheartedness. The thing that really just gives me a little bit of pause is there's a ton of superheroes being introduced into this. And so we have Green Lantern, right? Nathan Fillion is Green Lantern. We've got Mr. Terrific. That's Edai. I always pronounce his name wrong. Edai Gathurgi. We have Hawkgirl. And we have Metamorpho. All of these heroes are being introduced to this. So this is already going to kick off as this Justice League-sized event. And it's supposed to be the intro into this new Superman. And so that gets me a little nervous that they're going to start almost right away with the spaghettis.
I don't know, though. I kind of got that as we'll get a nod that those characters are coming, but I don't know if they're going to spend that much time. I don't think they're going to try to Justice League it where they're going to introduce 1,000 superheroes at one time. I feel like it'll be probably closer to Spider-Man, the old ones, like the Tobey Maguire ones, where you kind of got a nod oh, this is this villain, but you don't know they're the villain yet, but they're coming in the next movie. You know what I mean? I feel like they're going to lay it out that way.
I mean, with these heroes being here and it looking like a global event, they're gonna help. They're not just gonna be like, "Hey, we're here." But
yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Techtic on this. I think that everything I'm seeing from this trailer, I mentioned before the Christopher Nolan and the more recent Superman movies have been darker, and all of the DC movies recently have been darker, and this is very clearly intended to be a course correction back towards MCU-ish stuff tonally and visually, and I totally understand that, and that is the right thing for them to do.
Now,
I do have the same concerns as you, Techtic, that they're going to just throw too much stuff into the kitchen sink immediately, which is what Justice League did and is why Justice League failed, or one of the reasons.
What might help them going back to the era that they're taking inspiration from is we know the big bad is going to be Lex Luthor, and we also know that he's going to do something to himself to give himself a massive power boost. And so at least having that be just Superman, main villain that everyone knows, I think that's potentially going to be its saving grace. So at this point, I'm optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
And I'm really just excited to see Crypto. I know, we all know that I'm the animal lover here. I will geek out over animal presence in any piece of media. But Crypto has been an important character since he was introduced, and we've never really seen him on the big stage in a DC movie. And I know there was the whole Super Pets movie, but that doesn't really count when you're talking about the mainline Superman movies. And I don't know, I just love dogs, and I feel like it's so wholesome, and I love that. And you know me, I have gone on record saying that I thought the MCU sometimes leaned a little bit too much into the campy and cheesiness, but I think as long as they don't overcamp this, I think that this wholesomeness is kind of what we need from a superhero movie. I feel like it can kind of go back to what we had prior to the MCU, where you had maybe, even if it's just a standalone movie, which I know it won't be, but you can watch this as a standalone movie and walk away feeling an iota of positivity and not have to rack your brain to make all of these connections with 1,000 different things. I'm just excited for a return to form.
And can we also note that Crypto's left ear is the star of the show?
So freaking cute.
So I do think that, again, I think my main problem with it is just that I don't find Superman to be a compelling character ever. But I
never
also
have
think
either,
that
but here we are. It's weird.
This movie has a massive, massive weight sitting on its shoulders, and not even to quote unquote save the DCEU, right? I think that's part of it, but I think we're also, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think we may be approaching the post superhero era of cinema and Hollywood, and this movie has a direct responsibility to keep the genre alive. I mean, think about the MCU. Next year they have Captain America, the latest Captain America coming out, but like, I just don't think that has the scale of this one. And I also don't think there's much excitement about that one. So like, I think this is the one that like, if that genre is going to keep going, this is the one that's going to have to prop it up, because I don't know. Again, maybe that's wishful thinking, but that's just my feeling on it right now. And I'm not saying it can't do it. And, you know, James Gunn, for all the issues he's had outside of his directing, like, he certainly has the pedigree to make a movie like this work, right? I mean, his Guardians of the Galaxy experience speaks for itself. He was a huge part of keeping the MCU going after it got its initial start. Guardians in 2014 was like a big jumping off point. So this can be a similar jumping off point if he handles it correctly. But, you know, I share Techtic's concerns about all the characters being thrown in too early. And I just wonder aloud if we are, again, to use the phrase, like if we're entering the post-superhero phase of cinema. Because I think that is possible, but it might even just depend on how this movie does. So July 11th, 2025, Superman is coming to theaters. So let us know what you thought of this trailer. We're all on Blue Sky now, at illeagle86.bsky.social, at nerdbomber.bsky.social, at techtic.bsky.social, and our main show account at onlinewarriors.bsky.social. Once again, if you try to tweet at us, it's probably just going to fall into the void. So let's move on and talk about Star Wars, because I thought this was very interesting. I read an article yesterday from Polygon about the Star Wars holiday special. And you know, first of all, I guess before we get into, you know, this show and the lore surrounding this show has started creeping back into Star Wars properties. You know, the article, to summarize it, basically talks about how there was a long stretch of time during which Lucasfilm, and George Lucas in particular, you know, after the holiday special just completely bombed, because it did, they issued it and they basically said, you know, what holiday special? And now it's starting to creep back into the lore. It was mentioned in The Mandalorian. It's apparently mentioned in Star Wars Skeleton Crew. You know, this event that the holiday special surrounds, Life Day, is kind of becoming more and more incorporated into Star Wars lore. And I wanted to talk about this because I think it's very interesting for a piece of canon like this to have this life cycle where it came out, it was so bad. Have you guys ever watched the Star Wars holiday special?
I didn't know it existed.
Same.
It is hard to watch. At least until recently, it has been very, very difficult to watch. So for those that don't know, the Star Wars holiday special, it premiered on television. So it was on TV, it was on CBS, November 17th, 1978. So this is, you know, essentially, I don't even think that, I mean, Empire wasn't even out yet. This was after A New Hope. And because New Hope was so successful, they parlayed it into this holiday special on TV, which I know other franchises have done this recently. Like, I think there was a Shrek holiday special that was televised. Guardians had a holiday special that was put directly to Disney Plus, but this is not an uncommon thing. I would say it's possible, I don't know, that maybe Star Wars is even what started this. But to kind of summarize what it is, it has a bunch of musical numbers. Jefferson Starship was on it, B. Arthur. There's a bunch of skits, a lot of cameos from the original cast, and also from some other people. It's almost 2 hours long. It is, so I have watched it. It is so bad. Like, it's hard to watch. There are super, super long stretches of time, because the story centers almost entirely around Wookiees celebrating this holiday of theirs called Life Day, which is kind of supposed to be the analog for Christmas. I'm not joking. There are like full scenes that are minutes long where Wookiees are talking to each other with no subtitles.
Seriously?
But like it's
that was
they will go and watch like a hologram of something of a creature or character like dancing, and then they will just converse with each other in Wookiee speak about it. And you, the viewer, are there just like, what's going on? Considering the fact that it was a television special, you know, from what I remember because it was I should say, it was years ago that I watched this, but my memory of it is that production value was also notably lower because it was something that was turned around quickly for television. But this is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about, is that it was so bad when it came out. It was universally panned. The original cast said they didn't even like it. Like, Harrison Ford has trashed it. Carrie Fisher trashed it. Even Anthony Daniels, who I think is generally very soft-spoken about these things, trashed it. But now I think there's this movement to kind of own it and maybe even celebrate it as a pretty kitschy part of the lore. And I guess I wanted to highlight that because I don't know if there are similar situations in other massive sci-fi canons like this, where like something like the Star Wars Holiday Special experiences this life cycle of being totally maligned and then kind of coming back around as something that, I guess it's for diehard fans, right? People who know about Life Day hear it being discussed in, Skeleton Crew and are like, oh my gosh, that's that holiday special that I watched that was terrible. I think it's really cool. And I would strongly recommend that you guys watch the holiday special if you can. I think it might be on YouTube. You can get it. I don't think it's on Disney Plus. Like, again, I think Disney continues to, in its own way, not make it super readily available, but I think you can go watch it if you want to on like YouTube or something. Just pour yourself a glass of wine and watch it because it is a really, really interesting experience. And, it is Star Wars, right? So like you still like, I'm almost positive Luke shows up.
Sounds like something we should enjoy over a nice thing of Vinglog.
Man, I'm so scared of that.
What is Vinglog?
That wine you heat up.
We bought it years ago. And it is very thick and red looking, and it is
like Glühwein, because Glühwein's another one that's I think similar, like a holiday wine that's like very clove forward.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything again in other pieces, major canon universes. Like I don't think there's anything in the MCU that has experienced this. Maybe it's because the MCU just hasn't had a long enough life yet. But like,
I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy did a little Christmas special that it was.
Well, they did,
okay.
But I'm talking about something that was like, when it first came out, it was so universally panned, and now it's kind of like coming back around as people are like, oh, well, actually, that wasn't so bad, or like, oh, we should, there's something wholesome about the entire fandom being like, fair, well, it wasn't great, but we should own it.
I think there's a lot of Christmas media that if you watch now, it's like, what the fuck? But like, it's totally just accepted because it's Christmas media. So like, I grew up loving March of the Wooden Soldiers, and I watched it with my dad, and it's like this cherished thing that I've watched. I watched it with Nerdbomber, and she was like, "The fuck are we watching?"
It's creepy. Yeah, no, I think there is a lot. I think Christmas media is a very interesting genre. You're right, because even stepping away from the Star Wars aspect for a second, like I think it's interesting to think about. Christmas movies still come out every year. And I wouldn't say we've gotten any quote unquote classics. Like we have classic Christmas movies from the 90s and even from the early 2000s that are now considered classics that people watch every year. But like, I think it's becoming a harder and harder genre to
because
a classic entry in.
Streaming has become the death of classics. You used to have like, 2 major networks and they would run the same shit year over year, instilling themselves as this, forcing it basically to be the classic, right? Now you've got a billion zillion options all making their own content, and so everything just gets washed away.
So it could be that. It could definitely be that. But I think that part of it is that I think as a collective viewership now, we are just so much less willing to suspend our disbelief for any piece of media. And like, I think holiday movies in general demand that more so than other genres. Like thinking about Home Alone, like it's a ridiculous movie, but it's a classic, and it ingrained itself as a classic in a time during which we could go to the movies and watch a 12-year-old kid like cause traumatic brain injuries repeatedly to 2 guys and be like, yeah, this is good entertainment, and that doesn't really fly now. And you've seen that with subsequent Home Alones that have come out in like even the 2010s that like are just immediately like,
well, that's also because they're like
because
cringy.
The premise is ridiculous.
Well, not even the premise is ridiculous.
Like, that's exactly my point.
They lean into almost it has this direct to VHS type quality to them, and they're not good.
Sure,
like it's not
right.
There's definitely production value in the first couple Home Alones that the subsequent ones did not get, and then they were like, "Why did this flop?"
Christmas viewership now is very interesting because every year that comes around, you have really two groups of viewership. I mean, a lot of people are in both groups, but like you have people who watch the Christmas classics, again, Home Alone, even other ridiculous movies from that time, like Jingle All the Way, which is like an insane movie, but is to me a classic. Like movies like that don't really show up anymore, or they just feel like white noise. The other group now is movies that just swing so far in that direction. They know you need to suspend your disbelief, so they're just going to go all the way with it and go like full Hallmark with it. These movies coming out, like the Lindsay Lohan movie from this year and I think last year, and these are again mostly direct to streaming, and they're like they are so shamelessly like, hey, this is not intended to be taken seriously. This is like a Christmas romance that, you know, the Hallmark Christmas movie is now a genre in and of itself, and it's like insanely popular. So like I feel like there's no room for a movie to come out around Christmas time and like, you know, enshrine itself in that pantheon of Christmas classics. I think last year, what is that movie with Paul Giamatti that won a bunch of Oscars? That movie tried, and I can't think of the name of it now. It was a fantastic movie.
Oh, it's The Holdovers? The
Holdovers, thank you. That movie tried and did a very, very good job, but like, even that, like, I haven't watched that movie this year, and I think it is intended to be a Christmas movie, and it is a very, very good movie. It's almost like, you know, as a society, we have room for a certain number of Christmas classics, and the bucket's already full. So, like,
that's what I was
going to say. There's just not demand for it.
I think there's only so much time that you have, especially like this year. I feel like I felt this a lot. There was only 2-3 weeks. Not 2 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but like it was definitely shorter. It was like a 3-week span instead of your normal like 4 or 5 weeks. And you just don't have enough time to watch all of the classics that you want for nostalgia purposes and then new ones. And so when you're thinking about the movies you're going to revisit, like even I have some movies like The Holiday or Love Actually that are not an annual watch, but they come around like every 3 to 5 years. I'll give them a watch. Like, it's not an every year thing. You just got to pick and choose. And so far there hasn't been something that's like that memorable to be interjected into the cycle. Right. I think, you know, holiday movies that come out, even if they are good, like The Holdovers was, like they have a very hard job. They have a very finite space into which to wedge themselves. And, you know, we've gotten far away from the Star Wars holiday special, but like, I think holiday media is very interesting. We'll see. I think it would be very interesting if Disney Plus put the holiday special back up. I'm sure the master still exists somewhere, so like they have it. It'll be interesting to see if demand for that grows at all or reaches the critical mass to the point that it becomes watchable. Maybe I shouldn't be holding my breath, but it's very interesting. Skeleton Crew is out now. I have not tried watching it, but I have actually heard that it's pretty good. So we're going to take a short break now before we come back to talk a little bit about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. But before we do any of that, Mr. Stephen Keller, Merry Christmas to you, sir. As our gift, it's the same gift we give you every week, which is a shout out as a producer on this show every episode. Stephen is a producer on the show. He supports us at the highest of our 3 levels of Patreon support, which is the Knight level. He has shiny armor. He's got a big sword or a cudgel or whatever he wants. And he gets his producer shout out. He gets input into the weekly game segment, which we are skipping this week, but the quiz for next episode has actually already been prepared based on his feedback. He, of course, also gets access to the monthly secret segment and the monthly vlog, as well as the occasional guest spot on the show. So that's, again, the highest of our 3 levels of Patreon support. But there's also a Squire level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and a Page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Consider giving us a gift this Christmas and giving back to the show, helping us keep this thing going. Say hi to us, say hi to Steven. And again, that's patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Thanks again to Steven and all of our Patreon supporters. We will take a short break now before coming back to talk about Blake Lively.
This is The Gorge. It's a podcast where my friend Sarah and I gorge ourselves on overanalyzing a topic.
The body count in this children's movie.
It's insanely high. The reason he's able to be a good assassin is because no one would expect a gorilla to kill you.
I made the incredibly stupid decision to start Marble Hornets.
And the robot says, I know where we can find your baby. It was stolen by Cap'n Crunch.
He sounds like Chuck Huber?
Yeah. How did you... No, I was going to say that. The Gorge. 3 times a month, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we are back to get serious. I guess that's not a good way to say get serious. Get serious, I guess. Remember when It Ends With Us came out? This was the movie that came out earlier this year, I believe in the summer. It starred Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, who I believe also directed the movie. And
I think it was like his production company too.
His production company. It Ends With Us is a Colleen Hoover book. The story, I have not read it, nor have I seen the movie, but centers pretty heavily around domestic violence. And Well, those that were around in the summer, as I hinted at before, kind of remember, or at least I remember, that there was kind of a big social media to-do about this movie because during the press tour, it became clear pretty quickly that Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, who were co-stars and would typically do a lot of the press junkets together, kind of just weren't interacting with each other at all by that point. It was clear that there was a rift that had appeared during production, and there was, for lack of a better term, smear campaigns, in particular directed at Blake Lively, that I will say, we got an article from the New York Times earlier this week that digs into Justin Baldoni and the film's producers essentially hiring PR people to do exactly that. Smear Blake Lively, predominantly in social media. I will say, one of my takeaways from this story immediately is that I remember us, the social media consumers, kind of seeing through that. I think it's interesting to see all of Justin Baldoni and his producers, all their work to accomplish this. And it was clearly very targeted, and it was done so, whether or not they will admit to it, in a retaliatory manner because she had alleged harassment by Baldoni and producers. They had to bring an intimacy coordinator on set, put safeguards on set. There was a side letter added to her contract agreeing not to retaliate against her. It clearly didn't turn out that way, and they started this kind of social media firestorm campaign against her, scorched earth campaign. It was effective in the sense that sales of her cosmetics really tanked. Her public image was for sure tarnished. And, these two men, Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath, they apparently trumpet themselves as, feminist allies, people who were big in the #MeToo movement, and this article has made one thing clear, if anything, which is that is a performative gig for them.
This was,
and it's upsetting. Yeah, I'll turn it over to you.
Like, as someone who is probably a little bit too much online, like TikTok, a lot of people were very much swayed by this smear campaign. And when I was, watching all this stuff, I was like, it is very sus that even the author of the book and all of the other actors are on one side and he is kind of all by himself. Like, to me, that screamed something is not right. And clearly, not to say that the masses are always correct, but clearly, if you're ostracizing one person, something had to be amiss on their end. But the internet, because I think how effective this kind of behind the scenes smear campaign ended up being, they really did latch on, and people were saying that Blake Lively was horrible to work with. They were unearthing old interviews. I remember there was this one interview that was pulled up and people were like, oh my God, she's such an awful person. And they were knocking on the fact that she was promoting her other brands and being overly positive about the themes of the movie and not really leaning into the domestic violence, even though her contract with the production company said that's how she should have been promoting it. It was very effective. And man, the internet can be so wild and a little scary sometimes. And I feel like that's just kind of where I've landed, because this is not the first time that we've seen this happen. I feel like we see the internet influence people off of false pretenses very easily lately, and it's very scary to me. I know we are also people on the internet sharing our opinions, but I don't know. It's very weird.
I think I count myself lucky that internet-wise, apparently run in the circles that, like I said, I remember there being some questioning of this narrative, because this was no doubt the narrative that was being pushed, was that, she's awful to work with, like you said. There were interviews from as far back as 2016 that were being dredged up of her, making sideways comments or whatever. That was the narrative being pushed, but there were people that I follow that were like, this is something that doesn't seem right here, because like you said, Colleen Hoover was very wary of Baldoni, and it just, something didn't feel right. So there was awareness of that. With that said, broadly speaking, it is scary to consider that the message that we see is the message that we are being given by someone. And then this PR firm that was hired, they've represented Johnny Depp, who recently won his defamation lawsuit against Amber Heard, and I think it represented Drake and I think it was Travis Scott, someone else. So there is it's sad to say, a very calculated and I imagine very profitable and successful industry for doing this. And that's a very scary thing. I think it's also kind of is worth saying, reading there's stories like this, and this is going to sound like me patting myself on the back, and I promise you that's not why I'm bringing it up. The allegations against, these two guys, the things that they did on set, I'm not even going to say what they are because there's really no point to doing that, but these are like base humanity things. Like it's not.
We are at a point where it is very well known that this is unacceptable. Like, I was reading this article and I was like, what is this, the 1920s? Before like
right.
I'm not going to say what was done in the 1920s was acceptable in the 1920s, but like the awareness just wasn't there. People were just not decent like today. And shocking.
It's very hard for me to square, especially, in today's day and age, and especially post Me Too movement, by guys who were actively involved in the Me Too movement, like saying the stuff they said, doing the stuff that they did. It's just very hard for me to imagine doing something like that. You know, I'd like to say that this New York Times piece will, affirm that effort did not work. But, this article ends with talking about how this guy, Justin Baldoni, like he just got another award for like, I don't know, something about, trumpeting women in media or something. Like, it's just very strange that there's this two-facedness, this two-sidedness of it, where it seems like everyone kind of knows he's a bad guy, but he's just kind of still doing his thing. The one-word answer for how that could be is privilege, but it's very hard to read. I would recommend anyone who hasn't read the whole story, go read the whole story, because you might learn something that you didn't know. And whatever your opinion of Blake Lively is, because like, I'll be honest, my opinion going into this and even hearing the stuff over the summer, I don't have much of an opinion at all. My resting state when it comes to celebrities, and you guys can say whether you feel this way or not, like, I imagine that most people that are celebrities, even if they have this whole like tailored, like I'm a cool guy or a cool girl image, they're probably not. Like, I hate to ruin people's parasocial relationships, but like anyone who even, like, you could even say Tom Hanks. Like, I bet Tom Hanks is like not that good a guy. That's just kind of my resting belief in the notion of celebrity, and in particular Hollywood celebrity. That said, like, I am sure Blake Lively is not all of the things that are being said about her, because they are being said about her to combat the actually true narrative that like these guys are just horrible.
Well, I think the one statistic that I'll cherry pick, and I might be misquoting this, so hold me accountable, but I think it was something like 35% of all search engine articles that came up about Blake Lively also had Justin Baldoni mentioned in it. And like, when you think about the fact that she has been acting, I mean, you go back to Gossip Girl and Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and like, she's married to one of the most famous actors as well. She's also a famous actor. Like, her career and her influence is so much bigger than this one movie. And the fact that 35% of her search engine and internet hits had some tie to him is, I think that says volumes in and of itself. So
right. So she is in the process, and kind of the impetus for this article that we've read. She is in the process of what seems like essentially starting a lawsuit, because she subpoenaed a bunch of text messages that really just show that Baldoni in particular was just all out like, hey, we need to smear this lady because she's making me look bad because I did these things that I very much did. And she hired a brand marketing consultant to scrape that data. And like you said, the 35% is just super unusual considering the career that she has had with Gossip Girl and The Town and so many other things, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Like, she exists so much outside of this one movie, whereas, like, relatively speaking, at least, he does not. So, like, that overlap is
would you say,
to say the least.
This movie doesn't end with us, it ends with lawsuit? But
I think it very well could.
I mean, it is. I mean, she's suing him. Get it?
I also think this is a really weird, like, I didn't read the book, and this is so outside of the topic here, but like, watching the trailer for this movie, what a strange story. Like, it seems like this story, I don't want to say it is glorifying domestic violence, because I'm sure it's not, but like, I remember watching the trailer, and the trailer very much was like, oh, this guy's a bad guy, but he means well. Like, there was definitely an undercurrent of that.
It's not glorifying it. That's how it plays out usually. That's why a lot of them stay in these terrible relationships.
Yeah, I think it's telling of the story itself that she was instructed to market it in a certain way. I think just means it's like a very potentially problematic story to tell, but maybe that means it should be told, But
also, his production team is the one who told her what to market it as,
They also said to really focus on the floral aspect, which, like, what the hell?
The main character owns
such
a
a
flower
weird
shop.
No, I know, but like that's still just a weird thing to focus on relative to the rest of what's going on in this trailer and this movie.
Exercise your internet literacy. Don't always believe everything. Don't even believe, like I just said, fact check my statistic. I think I did pull the right stat, but like don't take everything at face value. You know, people can say whatever the frick they want on the internet.
That is very true. Like, yeah, I think we collectively would encourage you, but by all means, the practice should be go and form your own opinion by gathering all the information you can with as little bias as you can. And like, yeah, we don't know this guy. I haven't even seen the movie or read the book. I don't really care either way about Blake Lively. So like, I really truly have no horse in this race. It's just based on, the reading that I've done and the facts that are laid out by this, by the way, very, very good New York Times article. Like, it kind of paints a pretty clear picture as to what happened. So anyways, felt worth bringing that up because it was a big story this week. And, it's really depressing, but what isn't these days? We're going to round out the show. Again, no quiz here. We're going to round out the show with a quick little What Are You Up To Wednesday. And I'm going to turn it over to my guy, Techtic, to kind of kick us off with that.
So I want to talk about something that's a little related to this day. We watched Red 1. And I got to say, it was Nerdbomber. I'm going to quote Nerdbomber in this one. And Chris Evans, you're absolutely right. He plays a much better douchebag than he does as a self-righteous Captain America.
He plays such a good douchebag.
Such a good douchebag. It's like chef's kiss. Like, that's why I preferred him in The Human Torch. I'd agreed with your take. That was like spot on. So thank you for making that wonderful note. And I got to say, this movie, it is not like, you're not going to remember it after like 2 months, but for like a Christmas little thriller, it's got feels, it's got like all of the different holidays. It's kind of like take the Santa Claus 3, the third one with Tim Allen, and make an Avengers movie is how I would describe it. It was pretty good. So I definitely recommend streaming it. It's not a theater watch. Do not waste your money, but it's a get a bowl of popcorn and go ahead and stream it and enjoy yourself.
I feel like you comparing it to Santa Claus 3 is the best indicator because, like, by the way, I have not seen Santa Claus 3. And, like, I love Santa Claus 1 and 2. I just kind of know to skip Santa Claus 3. I think, yeah, the Chris Evans point, too, it's a cartoonish take, but, like, he also plays a douchebag in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah, he does a good douchebag.
Excellent in that role. So I do think I agree with that point in particular.
I like I said, shout out to Nerdbomber for that one. It was a great take. And then the other thing that I want to give a shout out to, we finally beat the first round of For the King 2. Holy cow, this game was hard. But we're starting to pick up some ground and lock some more. It is truly a roguelite. And so it's stressful, but we're still enjoying it and having a good time.
I will say the more characters that you have in your party, and this makes sense. So like the game doesn't scale, right? So if you have 2 people, it's going to be much harder than if you're playing with 4 people. And the cool thing though, is that if you don't have a full party of 4 to play with, you can, because, it's all just based on controller assignments, you can play as 2 different characters. So in our second run, so we beat the first campaign because there's like 5 different campaigns in the game. The first campaign we beat and it was just the 2 of us. In the second campaign, there's different like character loadouts that you can unlock before each campaign. That's what makes it kind of like a roguelite. But now we're approaching it as, a 4-player team, and it's definitely a little bit easier.
Is it okay to call it? Yeah, we're going to call it a foursome. Go as a foursome. It's much better.
I think that's okay. I think I approve of that. Right on, man. Well, hey, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Whatever your inclination is. I'm going to sandwich myself between the 2 of you. If that's all right. I'm gonna go with something a little bit unconventional because I did over the past weekend for the holidays. I did travel to the Big Apple, New York City, baby, and I wanted to shout out an experience I had there, which for the moment is certainly niche. I'm not expecting people to hear my review and like get up and go to New York and see this show, but like eventually the Broadway cast recording will probably hit Spotify, or you'll be able to watch the show online or something. I watched a new musical called Maybe Happy Ending. This was a show that admittedly I went to predominantly because my wife is a huge Darren Criss fan, and he played the lead in this show. Darren Criss of Glee fame, if you are a Glee head, or a Gleek, I think is what they're called. I mostly want to talk about how emotionally devastating this experience was. It was a show that it was probably I've seen a good number of Broadway musicals, in a touring capacity mostly, but I've been lucky enough to see a couple of shows actually on Broadway as well. This was probably the best story of any show that I had seen. It's about robots, but in particular, it's about robots who have been retired. So they've been retired for newer models. Their owners have essentially put them out to pasture in a complex where they all live together and essentially just wait to quote unquote die, because they also stop making the replacement parts to, upkeep them. So just that premise alone is kind of sad, because like the main character of this show is essentially waiting for his owner to come and reclaim him. And it's pretty clear from the jump that he never will. I won't get into the details of that because it's a spoiler, but it's also a show about, two robots that fall in love, but then again, they're facing imminent death, so they have to determine how to manage that, because one of them is going to live for quite a bit longer because they're a newer model. You get the idea. Just really a downer. But like, I wanted to highlight it because I think that sad stories, well, often hard to watch or read or listen to or whatever, are very valuable and emotionally powerful. So again, that show is called Maybe Happy Ending. The music was also good. The acting and performances were amazing, but I really wanted to highlight the story as being just really, really good. So anyways, I went to New York City. I saw the big tree. It's very large. There's a lot of lights on it. You get the idea. We'll round things out with Nerdbomber.
All right, so I'm going to keep it Christmassy. We also watched Carry On, and this is the Taron
Egerton.
Okay.
Egerton.
The Taron Egerton movie on Netflix, and it also is Jason Bateman. I think we talked about the trailer when it came out on the show a while back, but the premise is basically that Taron Egerton's character is, vying for a promotion after kind of letting his life pass him by as a TSA agent for the last 5-6 years or whatever. So the day that he picks to try to go in for a promotion happens to be Christmas Eve, and he's, given a higher station. And in doing so, he gets involved in a terrorist attempt where they're basically holding his girlfriend hostage or under threat, telling him to let a bag go through that contains a mysterious item. And obviously, it could be something bad or a bomb or whatever. So Jason Bateman is the mysterious figure basically talking to him and threatening him in this process and making him, pass the bag through bag check. And I would say it was a pretty good movie. Techtic said it was very forgettable and that in 2 months he won't remember anything about this movie.
Correct.
And that's probably fair. But I think in terms of something trying to be Die Hard for Christmas, I thought it was a decent Christmas action movie.
It did do a good job there. You were making a reference of it the next day, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, I did make a reference, and it went right over his head. But I thought it was entertaining. I usually don't like action movies, but I felt like this was very believable. And Taron Egerton, like his character, was supposed to be a sort of normal guy. And there were a few instances where he maybe did some over-the-top fantastical things that I don't know if a normal guy could be able to do. But for the most part, it was relatively grounded in terms of what was happening in the movie. And I think the action sequences were really well. I think Jason Bateman played a really good, believable bad guy in this. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I would put it into the Christmas classic rotation, but I would definitely say it's probably worth at least one watch if you're in the Christmas spirit looking for an action flick.
Yeah, I heard it was good. Again, just going back to our point we made before, like the Christmas classic pantheon is very hard to get into. And I think any action movie that is also a Christmas movie just has an impossible task because it's going to be compared to Die Hard every time and not without reason. But, as a one-off, Netflix thing, like I will probably watch this. I don't know when exactly, but I will probably watch this at some point. So good to hear.
Yeah, I think it has its place. And the other thing is I'm still working through Babel. It's going pretty well. Oh, and we did start watching Secret Level, which is that Amazon show that has like little shorts about various video games.
That's the thing I was forgetting.
And they're all various lengths. Like I think the Pac-Man one was 9 minutes. Some of them are up to 20 minutes. I think so far they've all been pretty good. The only one that I was just a little meh on was the Warhammer one, just because it was so dark and I don't really understand that franchise and IP. And I had no idea what was really going on. And that one kind of lost me. But like the Unreal Tournament one was Chef's Kiss. The Pac-Man one was great.
Unreal was the best one, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely worth a watch. None of them are connected. Like, they're all individual shorts. You can just watch one at a time. Like, it's not like a series. You have to sit down and like link them all together. They're all just a bunch of shorts. And I think they're all really well done. So would recommend.
Right on. Being quizless for today, that brings us to the end of our episode. We want to once again wish everyone a happy and safe holiday season. Hopefully you're enjoying with family, friends, whoever you've got around you, and just, relaxing, taking it easy. The week between Christmas and New Year's is maybe the chillest week you're going to get out of any year, depending on what industry you're in or what you do. So just try to enjoy that. Get into a good book, good movie, good game, whatever you're up for. And we will see you all in 2025. It's going to be another banger year. With all that in mind, happy holidays, stay safe, and keep on podcasting.